Hey folks, and welcome to Art Notes, the podcast where myself, Jonathan Liddell, has a chat and interviews fellow creatives and entrepreneurs. Today I've got the privilege of being joined by Liam Johnston. Liam, thanks for coming on, mate.
Great to see you, man. Great to see you.
Who are you, buddy? What do you do?
Good. I'm just pretending we didn't have a false start there a second ago. No, I'm good. Yeah, it's nice to be seeing your face again. Those handsome looks.
Well, he sees what you get.
That's the only reason it's the only reason I agreed to chat to you, actually, to see that visage again.
Photograph would last longer, mate.
Well,
so, buddy, who are you? What do you do?
Well, my name's Liam Johnston, and I kind of do. This sounds wrong, but I kind of do anything that someone will pay me to do, but so long as it's within certain rules. I'm a freelance videographer, photographer, and performer as well. So I'm involved. I'll do all kinds of different stuff to do with video production. I actually don't really do very much photography except for fun. And I'll also perform different things. I have a band and make some music, and I also act in comedy sketches and film stuff as well. So yeah,
so a lot of different stuff. How do you kind of manage to juggle all that? Actually, I've just realized that's a lot of things to be involved with all at the same time. Well,
I think the key is, Jonathan, you've just got to be not that good, and then there's not enough there's not enough work in any one particular area. So you just no, I'm kind of joking, but no, it's I think because of the nature of doing freelance work, there is sometimes a challenge depending on how regular your client base is and stuff like that. Some people have maybe one company that hires them in a bunch to do certain things, and I've gone through phases where I've had things like that. But for the rest of the time, basically you're just filling up days with whatever you can fill them up with, so that you can make enough money. So it's not that difficult, really. It's just the same as if I only did one of those things. You just look at your schedule, and if the day is free when the person's asking you to work, then you book it in. So it's the tricky thing is the tricky thing is sort of finding a focus and making sure that you are delivering a good enough job on each of these things.
Which means that you'll be constantly kind of learning and adapting and keeping an eye on what's kind of fresh and who's needing what all the time, I imagine. It does sound like you're constantly having to be looking around to see how you can apply yourself to what jobs might be coming up.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you hear a lot of people. You can watch loads and loads of different videos and take classes and things, and people will give you all kinds of different advice. But I think actually, if you want to be hugely successful in something, normally you wouldn't do what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't. No, I'm being serious. You wouldn't spread yourself thin. You would actually focus on one area that you're really interested in and you really love, and you would work with that. But with me, I think we've discussed this before, just when we've been hanging out, but certainly with me, I'm just so interested in all these different things that I don't mind if I'm not top of the tree in any particular thing, because I like to be able to try and work on all these different things. I think learning different stuff all the time is exciting to me, and doing different jobs all the time is exciting to me. So for example, yesterday I was learning, I have a gimbal for my camera that I've been using for ages, and for a particular kind of shoot, I realized I needed it to do certain things, which I hadn't bothered to learn yet. So I spent a lot of yesterday trying to learn how to do these things with a gimbal. But the day before that, I was learning more about live streaming and using different softwares to live stream. And these are, you're just learning stuff all the time. Which I really love. I really enjoy doing that. So, but you do have to kind of stay on top of it. Otherwise, you won't be good enough. You won't actually,
So when did this all kind of start? When when did you decide, right, I'm gonna focus on the videography stuff. I'm gonna start looking around to see where I can apply myself, because you've been doing this for a wee bit now, and you've certainly been doing it as long as I've known you.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how far back to go and how dull this kind of stuff will be, but when I was a kid, I wanted to. I mean, loads of kids want this, right? But I wanted to be in films and direct films. I wanted to be like a film director, actor type. You know, like I used to think about it a lot when I was a kid, to the point where my parents, when I was in like, you know, primary 7 or something like that, they took me to a TV studio, like ITV in Scotland somewhere. I don't know, I was a kid. And to see how it was all going and all the rest of it. And it was so boring that I decided I didn't want to have anything to do with it whatsoever. Like, it was the dullest thing ever. So I wasn't interested. And then I went through school and kind of just didn't really know what I wanted to do in things. And I left school and went to study architecture, which was just because I was so interested in creative things. And my uncle had been an architect and it seemed like an interesting job. But it wasn't for me either. Like, it was, again, I think I've shared this analogy with you before, but I think it was, for me, it was like when I love food, so and I love going to like a nice restaurant, although none of us can really do that just now, but I like going to a nice restaurant and you know, like, you get this thing and it's presented in front of you, it looks amazing, it tastes amazing, it's like something new and fresh and interesting. But then if they brought the chef out afterwards and were like, hey, you really enjoyed that meal, but now do you want to hear all the details about how you put this together? Then I'd be like, no, thanks.
No,
I just
no, thanks.
enjoyed the meal. I'm not
already.
really bothered.
Yeah.
And architecture is like that for me, where I love lots of, you know, I love looking at spaces, exploring beautiful buildings, things like that. And so I thought I would really enjoy the subject, but I don't really care how they insulated it, or, you know, like how much guttering a thing needs, or what materials were you. It doesn't, the detail of it didn't interest me. Whereas at this time, when I was at university studying architecture, my friend and I started making films. Now, they were dreadful films. Like, I'm talking, I mean, an embarrassment to people with video cameras everywhere, right? But it was so much fun. We just like loved writing them and making them together. And I started to realize as well that I was really fascinated by the detail of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything about it was interesting to me. All the things that definitely would be boring to other people, you know, like, you know, all the technical things and all that kind of stuff. I started to get really interested in all that. And that's how I knew, oh, this is much more for me. So, and although a big part of it as well was I really enjoyed the performance element of getting in front of the camera. And it was one of those things, again, where me and my friend were not very good. So the only way we'd get in front of a camera, the only way someone would let us, is if we were in charge of the camera. So that's kind of what drove it as well. So, and it was once we got behind the camera, then an interest in those things started to develop as well. So, so we started making films like that. And then I think at one point, because I wasn't liking architecture and he wasn't liking the job he was doing and didn't know what he was going to do next. And then we had a third friend who was a really, really talented animator. We were just like, I think someone asked the animator, we actually did we've got a ridiculous comedy series that is all about how this happened. And it's worryingly close to real life when you watch it. But the
best comedy tends to be.
Yeah, and slightly tragic. He got asked to do a DVD thing on the back of his animation, like a combined video animation thing. But he didn't have any video stuff, so he asked us to work with him on this thing, and then from that we sort of made a little company, and we've all gone off. We're all doing our own things now, but that's how we all got into those kind of areas, was doing that. So and somebody paid us to do it, and I was like, oh, so
there's actually money in this.
Since then we just, that's how I've kind of made my meager amounts of money. So, yeah.
But I mean, that does tend to be a lot of people's stories, though, isn't it? It's like I had a vague interest in it back in the day. I fell off the bandwagon. I wasn't interested in it. Life wasn't going the way I wanted it to. I revisited it and then just worked my backside off once I found something I was interested in. I think there's a lot to be said for just having the guts to be like, I'm just going to do this now. It's if things haven't quite gone how I wanted them to, I'm just going to put the time and effort into learning skills, finding elements of it that interest you, which actually is a good question. What is it? What are the details of videography that you're like, this is why I do this. This is why I continue to push forward for this to hone my skill. Like, what is it that really grabs you?
Well, so like you'd suggested what you wanted the thrust of this sort of discussion to be. And I would say that actually that is where it all comes from. So the idea, so you talked about this idea of story is king or whatever. So for me, all of the things that I'm interested in, everything that I enjoy and love is all, that is the thing that connects them all together, is this love of story. So all the music I do, all the photos I take, all the work I do, even the work for clients and things, sometimes it's a little dry and doesn't really call for much story and things like that, but it's still communication of information.
Certainly.
But I just really adore stories, and I think actually most people do on some level, but I really get excited about storytelling, and I don't know, there's just something about it that's magic to me, and I really get into it. And so I know that's a slightly different question than the technical thing you just asked, but that is what drives my interest in the technical things, is because I want to know more about, because this is how, so when all these sort of big name directors and people are making films and things like that, the really good films that you see, someone has taken this story idea, and what they've done is it's fed all the way through everything that they've done. So every single part of that film, they have considered what these things mean to the story. So so for example, costume, like and I'm not talking about even wacky films, I'm talking about films where it's people in everyday life. They'll think, what should this guy be wearing that most communicates what his character is and how he feels just now. Things like the location, like the same thing, things like the camera angles and camera shots, like the depth of field, all these kind of things, they use them to make you feel a certain thing when you watch it. Like for example, a big wide shot of a guy sitting alone on a bench, that's going to make you feel that kind of isolation or loneliness, things like that. So I mean, these are very basic things, but these are all like all of these things, including all of the little things you need to learn about how to get the best picture out of the camera and things like that. All of that is all, it feeds into how to tell the story better. I think, and again, these are things that people absolutely specialize in, so you'll get a guy who's a director of photography who that's his only thing. He just looks at
difference. Create the shot. The director of photography will be explaining what shot would suit an emotion or a scene best, and then the videographers or they then
like the director
execute that.
So there's a different role between the director and the director of photography. The director, well, as my understanding, right, and what I've experienced on films is the director has the overall vision for the film. Like, so they're the one who they know they know how they want to tell the story and what they want the finished thing to look like and feel like. And that's actually why a lot of directors will choose and work with the same director of photography and things like that, because they know this director of photography makes it look like this, and that's what I want. Or they have a good rapport, and they know that they have a good communication to get the results that they want to see. But the director has the vision for the overall thing, so they'll actually probably be involved in most of the elements, talking to each person who is an expert in that area. So a director will probably have that's the kind of role that I love and enjoy, because you don't need to be an expert in any of the things. You do need to have an understanding of how each of these different things works. And you need to have a clear vision for how you want the film to look. But then you can sit down with like the director of photography and say, right, in this scene, the guy is really alone, and I need to communicate that. And this is what I was thinking. And then the director of photography will talk about his ideas and what he thinks would sell that the best. And the director will have the ultimate call on that. But if he's a good, smart director, he'll listen to the expertise of the director of photography as well. So,
got it.
And that's how it works across most of the roles in these kind of jobs, I think, as far as I've seen anyway.
Well, it's certainly, I mean, just like relating that to certainly now, whenever I'm trying to compose an image, I really will think about shot design. I'm very much thinking, just like you said, very basic. You know, have a big wide angle with one solitary figure. What emotion are you expressing? Loneliness, isolation, all that kind of thing. These the crossover between film and illustration. I mean, obviously the kind of product that we would associate that would be animation, but certainly from an illustrator's point of view, I'm thinking about this stuff all the time and hadn't quite, you know, I'm still very much learning the language of all these different types of things, but it's very interesting to think, what does all this come back to? It's what narrative, what story are you trying to tell? That's it's key.
And can be very, it's funny as well, because it can be very subjective. Like you can be like, I'm doing all this to make it look like this person feels alone and is isolated. And someone might watch it or look at it and they don't feel that at all. They feel like something else. But I think though, you know, that certainly when certainly if you're making a film or something, telling a story, basically, that you should be looking at the intent behind every little thing that you're bringing to the table. I can't even remember how we got into this tangent, but I think it was to do with like, it started with why I was interested in those details you asked me or whatever. And I think that, you know, that is the thing. It's just, and that is also what links all the things that I'm interested in is, I just love storytelling, you know, so in any kind of format. So, yeah. And it is everyone has different opinions about these things. Like, so, like, for example, I've been really enjoying photography recently and just mucking about with taking different photos and things. It's not something I know. I have been paid to do it once or twice, but it's not something that is my main, you know, thing to do or anything like that. But I watched a class on some photography stuff the other week that was really good, and it was, he started talking about story, and immediately I was like, yes, what's he saying? But it was just about the whole thing of exactly what you're talking about in illustrating and things like that, which is capturing like what the kind of photos that I love. They have questions all around them. Like you see the photo and then you're kind of drawn into what's the story around this photo, and you might put your own you know, like projection over what that thing is, what that story is, and all the rest of it. But the photographer's created a mood, or they've caught a moment that has something around it, some air of story around it. Yeah, I think that's something that is. I think that's also why sometimes it's really hard to judge, you know, some modern art things, like where it's very easy to be like, oh, come on, that's just like a picture of a packet of cigarettes, you know, or whatever, and be really, you know, cheeky about that kind of thing. But actually, sometimes those things will really resonate with someone because there's a hint of a story to the piece or whatever. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, no, I mean that's it, isn't it? It certainly can be subjective, but if you are creating a piece of work aimed at a certain audience, and you can execute what you're doing well, you will win that audience. I think it's you know, it may well be subjective, but if it is actually aimed at a particular group of folk who you really want to get a message to, even if it is lost on the majority, but you've won over the people that you're aiming at, then you've done your job. I think, you know, it just becomes a question of how well can you execute your skill set. Actually, I was just thinking there, if off the back of that, have you got a kind of client or a piece of work that you were like, I really nailed it there, I'm really pleased at how that turned out, or even, do you know what, this has been such a long slog and I'm glad we got to the end. Matt and I talk a lot about finished not perfect in a lot of ways, but if you kind of think back over all the kind of jobs that you've been on, is there one in particular that you just really enjoyed, that you thought, this is why I'm doing this?
There's hopefully a few, but I can't. I mean, the ones that immediately jump to mind are just because I've looked at them recently. But there's the obvious one in my mind is is one of the sketches that we did for the BBC Comedy Short Syuff, which is we did one called, I think we just called it The Ring, essentially, which is just ripped the name straight off the thing it was making fun of. But it was like this little horror comedy twist on the horror thing of that thing from the famous movie The Ring, where the woman climbs out of the TV screen, and it's very creepy. But in the sketch, it's a guy who's looking for a girlfriend, and the girl climbs out of the computer and he tries to have a relationship with her. But I thought that I was really happy with how we executed that, and the BBC were very happy with it as well. It won't be everybody's cup of tea, I'm sure, but I thought we'd done a good job with that. Like, in terms of it's short, but tells a whole bunch of jokes all in that one short time, and tells a little story as well. And I just thought it came together really well. So I was really happy with that. And another one that jumped to mind was a music video, which is actually I think it's still on the homepage of the website for my company or whatever it is, which is it's just a music video for this young guy. It's like the band is actually the young guy and his dad at the time. I don't know what they're doing at the moment, but the video, it was like a video. It was all very like, they have a very particular style that they were going for, and a very particular vibe, and it's a whole bunch of things, but there's kind of like that Roxy Music thing going on, and sort of it's definitely of an era, that this kind of vibe that they're going for. And I feel like we really captured this sort of, it has like a cheesy feel to it and all the rest of it, but also kind of cool. And all these, I don't know, I feel like we really I worked with a good director photographer on that one as well, and I feel like we caught the right vibe for those guys, and it was quite a lot of fun working on it. Also, it went wrong.
It went wrong. I was just going to say, like, that. Yeah. That sounds like a really tricky balance to get right. So, like, I mean, I'm visualizing this, and I'm thinking, you've got so you just said you got the director of photography there. You've got yourself coming with your skill set and knowledge. You've got the client who have a very specific thing that they're trying to do well. That sounds like a hard juggling act to do that well. So it went wrong. Tell us, how did you salvage that?
Well, the reason it went wrong was that the client kind of wanted it to be super cool, right? They wanted it to be really cool, and so what we talked about was, and it was the client's idea originally, was that they wanted to have, they just really loved the location, which was this barbershop that's very well known on the Perth Road in Dundee, which is their name's gone out of my head all of a sudden.
Not Benjamin.
Do you remember the name? I don't know why it's gone out of my head, just because I'm doing this, but whatever. They're really well known, and I've totally forgotten the name all of a sudden. But whatever, those guys.
No.
Benjamin Barker's, that's it, yeah. So their place, which is a really cool place, they've got lots of really cool decor, and the guy who runs it, he was certainly one of the first places in Dundee where they had all that kind of, the old man bonnets and everything going on,
aesthetic,
and the cool beards and all that kind of stuff. It was definitely one of the first sort of thing where it was like harkening back to a particular era or whatever.
Yep.
So they loved that location, and they wanted to do something really cool where he goes in to get a haircut and then goes up and starts playing a song in the barbers. So I just threw in some other elements, like there's a fan of the band in there who's playing it cool, and there's like some guys reading the paper. And then some people start coming by and like looking in the shop, and it turns into like a little gig in the shop or whatever. But a few of the things that went wrong were like hardly anyone came for a start, because that was something that we, you know, the client was going to get some people to come along, but it is very difficult because nobody was getting paid. It was, you know, like a weeknight, all this kind of stuff. So it was very tricky, but they struggled to get people to come along. So we had to sort of work with what we had to make it look like there was more people there. But even more than that, they'd seen this guy who was a really cool break dancer, and he was very, very talented, but he was also flaky as anything, like so flaky. I'm not mentioning any names, so it doesn't really matter, but he was really, really talented, but he was, he was I could tell straight away chatting, I was like, what kind of a guy he was, like a little bit really cocky, but you know, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, on the night of the thing, he was just like, oh yeah, I can't come, you know, like, and so all these people arranged, you know, certainly for I think for him and for us, it was a paid thing, you know. So, and he just was like, oh yeah, I'm not coming tonight. And it was like, okay, great. Well, so we were already there, you know, everyone's already there and set up. So I just, I had an actor friend who I didn't even know if he was free, but I just thought, well, there's two ways you can go. You could have like a really cool breakdancing scene, which is filmed nice and looks cool and all the rest of it. Or you could go comedy, right? And have somebody who's a terrible dancer and, you know, looks ridiculous. And that way the main guy still looks cool, you know, like still looks cool playing and singing the song. So we're not, you know, making fun of him in any way or that, if he wants to keep that sort of cool thing. But we are adding in this element of fun to the video, so it's also not boring, you know, it's just this guy singing a song. So I just called my actor friend, and he was like, yep, and just came down immediately. And played this ridiculous part where he sees that the guy's famous in the newspaper. He gets all excited, gets into the music, and then just starts dancing. And everyone else is kind of a bit like, ooh, you know. So it was very. Again, it's not even necessarily a fantastic video, but I feel like I was happy with how we captured the thing for the client, and especially considering that it hadn't gone well at all in terms of organization.
I was going to say. That's, I mean, and that's a fantastic example right there of you can be as prepared and show up to work be as prepared as you can be from your end. You can organize to the nth degree, you can get everything ready, and then still have something go wrong, significantly wrong, last minute, and then have to work on your feet to then find a workaround. Because I was just thinking there, it was like like even that, it's like we had this idea in mind where it'd be a professional dancer, and the kind of the story element that goes to that. Coming back to that, it would be like, right, there you go, there's somebody professional looking cool. To then totally flip that and then inject comedy into something that would have either been, look at this cool scenario. It's definitely a risk, but at the same time you're thinking, I need to have a different segment, or this, as you said, could just end up being boring. So then how you can navigate those waters of, well, it's not just the guy dancing, it's the crowd's response, and then how that makes the main subject of the video still look cool. I mean, that sounds like a lot of work to just run with on the fly and make it happen, but I imagine this type of thing happens all the time.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that if it's on a big production and things like that as well, like we just talked about a wee minute ago, like the different roles that people take. Like I think when you're for me doing this particular project with that client, that was, you know, I had to get all that done, right? So I was working with the client doing the writing. I was writing, there wasn't that much writing to it, but I was doing that bit with the client, preparing the shot list, working with the director of photography to make it look good and make it look the way we wanted it. Also making sure it was sticking to time. And then also, you know, somebody cancels, what do I do, and all this kind of stuff. All that stuff is not normally done by one person. Do you know what I mean? Like that's it on a bigger production. It's not. It's normally like it wouldn't normally be the director trying to phone you know, an actor mate and get them to come down and do the, you know, fill in because this dancer had cancelled, you know, like not on a big production. But
you're not yet
like
on a big production. Like you're
so
you're the man. Like you're
so you have to for these kind of things you have to do a lot more maybe than you would in those bigger things. So there is a lot. Yeah, there depending on the production, there can be lots to think about. But
yep. Oh, I just kind of marvel at, as you said, if you don't have the finance to have the luxury of a bigger production, you are that person, and you are that person for as long as it takes you to get onto a bigger kind of production level. So I'm just kind of thinking maybe, you know, maybe you're actually having to deal with these type of scenarios all the time, depending on the type of clients or what's being asked for. In terms of like, what do you kind of visualize, or what would you really like for yourself going forward with? I mean, is it a continuation of what you have just now? Do you have like a kind of ultimate goal that you'd really be working towards? I want to actually just say just now, just how much of a talented musician you are as well. I would personally, I would absolutely love to see that take off, but I don't know if that's purely something that you're just like, I just kind of enjoy it. But I'm going to put links to all of your stuff in the show notes of this, because it is just I can definitely see some a Man Alive production and music and a whole big package. But yeah, no, what you enlighten me. What are you kind of thinking going forward?
Well, so there are things that so for me there are things that I would like to do, you know, like particular projects I would like to work on and finish. There are goals where I would love to work on. You know, there's all these TV shows that get made for like Netflix and Amazon and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to be involved in something like that, or a proper big movie, you know. These are goals that I would really love to see happen. But this is something you and I have talked about again quite a lot, like just hanging out. But we talk about the goals thing and stuff like that. And so, you know, so when we've chatted about that, this is something that we've mentioned, which is that sometimes it's better to have process-oriented goals than milestone goals for certain things.
Definitely.
But a mixture of both is great, you know. But for me, the process thing is the thing that is, you know, seems more healthy and more something I can do. Which is, sorry, someone was phoning there. That's totally distracted me. But no, which is that. So, for example, there are a couple of show ideas that I want to pitch to the BBC. Oh, the COVID thing kind of has messed things up a little bit with that. But and it'd be great to see one of those made, you know. And they're just little things. They're not you know, like the BBC do a lot of this digital first stuff, which is shorter things that they put online, you know, mostly or occasionally iPlayer, and sometimes they screen it on TV as well. But so I would like to do that's a sort of, I see it as an achievable goal, you know, within the next year or two. But alongside that, I mean, there's other stuff I want to do. I want to make there's a short film idea that I've kept playing around with that I've not made. There's you know, there's stuff I want to do with my band and things like that, like you mentioned. But for me, it's just always working and always creating and always being involved in things that you're interested in. You know, like that's my goal, is to be doing that all the time, doing that every day. You know, working on those things. And you know, I might not be a giant success in any area, but actually, I don't really. It depends how you define success. To me, it's a success if I'm working on the things that I love working on every day, you know. So and I don't think you can get, you know, much greater than that, you know, or much more satisfaction than that, you know.
Totally agree.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I see it at the moment. But
we've talked a lot on the podcast about just the importance of community, and I think if there's one person who I can think of who does that and involves himself so richly in that, it is certainly you. Like you know, you really are. My hat goes off to you at all the different connections that you have, just in, not even just in one city, but in a spectrum of cities, but especially Dundee, and just how, you know, like, people get on with you for a reason. Like, you know, you work hard, you deliver great content, you're an absolute pleasure to be around. And I think that it really does come back, you know, what is success? Well, if I can be doing what I love and working at it, and around a network of cool people who all kind of want me to be working on bits and bobs, I think that's huge. I was I think I was just kind of thinking on like the kind of practical, just like you said, like how do you actually execute that? Having you and I in the past have certainly held each other accountable to just like weekly goals, which I found hugely beneficial. But I've always liked to interject a bit of practical advice into these podcasts. If somebody was to do just one thing or take one thing out of this, I would certainly offer with this is find somebody that you can be saying, just ask me at the end of the week if I've achieved X, Y, and Z. So I guess off the back of that, do you have a kind of parting message? Have you got anything that you would really say to kind of spur somebody on to just give it a go, or to help them get further afield in whatever their endeavors are?
Well, firstly, just thanks, man. That was very kind. Thanks a lot. But I would say there's two things that because I feel like I'm really saying anything, so I just feel like I've been rambling on. But
it's grand.
But the two things I would say that are important on the back of what you're saying there is one, that if you are in a creative pursuit and you are an artist or whatever in whatever area, and unless you're already doing fantastic, you're doing great, you're working all the time, that's fantastic. But if you're not, then I would just say, just keep doing stuff every day. Just keep creating all the time. Keep getting involved in whatever you can, because it's like what we spoke about just at the start of the podcast, right? Is that before you pressed record, we were talking, and you were talking about what the purpose of the podcast was, and what did I want to get out of it, and all the rest of it,
very much so.
Being involved in the podcast. And what I'd said to you at the time is what I would say based on what you just mentioned as well, which is that I would do this podcast because I don't know who's going to watch the podcast, and I don't know what opportunities can come from doing this, right? So I would rather do something and see what opportunities come from that thing than just be like, I'm not sure about this. I don't want to, I don't know. It's if you get an opportunities to do things, just do them. Unless you have something way better to do the things that come up, and just so long as you're always working, you're always like getting better at the things you do. You're always learning, and so that would be my thing. And that's the thing. And during this whole mad lockdown thing and all the rest of it, that has been something that has been a challenge, because it seems like you can't really do much, but you can keep learning. You can it can be a really massively productive time for artists in terms of learning, and in terms of practicing the things that you're doing, and using online platforms to display everything that you're doing. I had offers of work after the first major lockdown, because of some of the things that I'd been involved in, or just practicing with and all the rest of it. At home, I had people get in touch and ask me to do jobs, including taking photos for the Overgate and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, and that wouldn't happen if you just sit around being like, oh man, there's no work for me, there's nothing to do. Just do something. Just do whatever you can. Whatever dumb idea you might think it's rubbish, just do it anyway. Nobody has to see it. Just work on it. Just do it. Yeah, that's what I would say. And there was another thing. Oh, because you mentioned connections, and again, this depends on what area you're working in. But that's another thing that it just so happens that I love people anyway. I just really love people, like, and because I love story, you know, that's all tied together. Like,
That's where they
if
are.
you love story and you want to be able to tell good stories, you need to get to know people. You need to get to know a lot of people and a lot of wide variety of stories that people have, and all these kind of things. You can draw on those creatively, and it will energize you creatively. But more importantly, like,
such a good point.
I just love people anyway, right? So, and maybe that's not your personality. You know, if someone who's listening to this, that might not be their personality. But I would hope that you would open yourself to it a little bit more, and open yourself to meeting and connecting with new people, because it will do so many things for you. It'll provide work opportunities that you never thought were possible, and it will enrich. It will make you a better storyteller, whether that's through photography, painting, writing, video making, whatever it is. The more people, the more life you experience, then the better storyteller you'll be, 100%. So
I think, Joe, I think that is such an important thing to highlight, especially, you know, I don't want to get too political, but especially with the current climate of society. I think if it is so very easy to just lock yourself away and think, woe is me, you know, and at the minute, literally lock yourself away, because there are so many limitations. And yet the best, you know, the greatest change came with, you know, the greatest limitations. It's like when you are really refined back to what can I do in this new scenario, and it is depressing as hell, but it's only depressing as hell until you choose to do something about it. And I think it is, you use the word enrich, and I totally agree with that. Actually seeing how, even if you don't engage with them, understanding and learning how and why other people think the way they do. Actually, even if you don't agree with it, just taking the time to try and understand where that other individual is coming from it will make you more approachable to work with them in the future if they end up being a potential client. And B, it will just give you a broader understanding of, you know, how things work, and actually solidify why you believe the things you actually are more keen on. But from a creative point of view, if, you know, I have to create characters who are all coming from different life experiences, and I can't do that realistically, and therefore I can't engage with an audience if I'm writing fiction that is not based in some relatability. It's, you know, there needs to be variety in order to drive home a relatable, convincing story, no matter what that is. And that doesn't matter if you're selling toothbrushes, or if you're writing about fiction, or if you're filming a blockbuster movie. We are still people who want to engage with other people and find something that connects us on an emotive level for whatever reason. So I think that's huge.
And I think I know this is sort of meant to be like final words or whatever.
No, not at all. Like just run with it.
What you're talking about there, and what I was trying to talk about a little bit is really, it's empathy. You know, it's in my opinion, it's just opinion, but I feel like in order to be good at storytelling, or good at lots of artistic pursuits, you need to have lots of empathy. You need to know. You need to think about how what you're doing makes somebody else feel. And you need to, if you're creating characters, you need to know how somebody like that feels. You need to know and think about it. And it's not just a good thing for creating art. It's obviously just a good thing for being alive and being a good person. Like you say, with the current environment, like, you might totally dislike or disagree with somebody else, but you, better understanding that person, like you say, is the way to go. Not just like, if you look at the best stories, they all have depth to them. They all have, you know, lots of things going on. They're like, people don't like stories with two-dimensional characters unless they're, you know, a kid or whatever. Sometimes, you know, or I'm generalizing, but normally people don't really respond well to stories with two-dimensional characters, especially nowadays. Like, people are much more interested in things that are complex and involve complicated characters. You look at someone like Walter White in Breaking Bad. You look at characters in like The Boys on Prime and stuff like that, where it's like their characters are multi-dimensional. They're not entirely horrible. They're not entirely good. You know, the good guys are not always good. The bad guys are the way they are for certain reasons. And understanding that for telling stories will make your stories amazing. If the villain is someone that you can actually kind of empathize with a little bit, like, and that was the thing, like when Black Panther came out, that was something that people said about the villain in Black Panther, like that they actually kind of empathize more with the bad guy. Some people, you know.
Yep.
And that's what makes I don't even particularly really like that film, but there are, you know, if you want to tell good stories, you need to be able to understand people, which means understanding people that you don't like as well, you know, like, and people that have maybe hurt your feelings in the past and things like that, you know. Yeah, there you go. And if you think about it, there's no interesting story anywhere where everyone all talks the same, everyone thinks the same. So you need to be able to tell a good story, you need to be able to see how other people think as well. Like, so so that you get different voices in. Otherwise, everyone's just going to have your voice in the story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I can really relate to that, and that is something that I am personally trying to do well with my own craft, because it's me that's writing these books, you know, which could easily just be one voice. The only way I can find different voices is if I'm actually having interesting conversations with people and doing my homework and looking into, you know, where those motivations come from. Love it.
That was a thing I read in one book about storytelling or script writing. It said, if there's a scene and somebody asks a question and everyone in the scene would answer the question the same way for the same reason, you need to get rid of some of them characters because they're all the same. You just or combine them into one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anyway, it's just a little thing I remember reading.
Yeah.
But.
Cool. Did we miss anything?
I don't know. Just blabbed on.
I'm loving it. No, it's great. Cool. Well, I will. I'll leave all your links and everything below. Anything to end on? Happy?
Nah, just you know,
gravy.
It's good to see you.
You too, mate. You too. Well, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Art Notes with myself, Jonathan Liddell, and Liam Johnston. Take care.
Take care.